Well, hello, my name is Kelly Perez Tuchowski. My daughter is Alexandra Perez. We call her Alex, and she was diagnosed with Down syndrome at birth. Alex probably had more challenges in her younger life. I feel like we've been pretty lucky being in the position that I am at the Down Syndrome Association. I meet families that have children born with all different types of medical issues. And Alex, she was born relatively healthy. We've had some GI issues with her, lots of ear infections that resulted in lots of surgeries on her ears that resulted in lots of scar tissue buildup. And now she has a moderate hearing loss. So she does wear hearing aids. And because that all happened younger in life, it affected her speech. She speaks well enough to be understood, but it does remain a challenge for her to be able to effectively communicate with people and get her needs across. But for her family, we all know what she wants when she says certain things. And, sign language, I think, has been a blessing for us as well. I'd be lying if I said there was no grief at the time Alex was born. I guess you need to understand, though, that I was 21 years old when I had Alex. So my husband at the time and I were both very young. We had not had the life experience at that point to really cope with a lot of different types of things, let alone at birth finding out our daughter had Down syndrome. So we had no time to prepare. Alex is 33 years old. So more than 30 years ago, they weren't doing prenatal testing. I think I had one AFP blood test and one ultrasound. And at no time was there any indication she was going to be born with Down syndrome. So when that news hit me as a young mom, it was devastating. I thought for sure. I remember I canceled the new baby pictures. You were able to pay a certain amount and the photographer would come in. And I thought back then that I was not supposed to celebrate her birth. There was talk amongst my friends about, well, she can put her up for adoption. I'm sure she can do that. There were all these things hitting me while I'm still dealing with the fact that, is this real? I just had a baby and she has Down syndrome. What does that mean? What does that look like? So the grief was real. The grief was strong and it was heavy. I think back then, I'm sure they had rules on how many people were allowed to be in a room when you just had a baby, but it was like the nurses were like, go in there. She needs support. So I remember seeing like a whole room of friends and family, and they were all holding Alex and kind of passing her around. And I think that helped me a little bit see that people were looking at her and holding her and loving on her. But I thought, my life is going to be totally different. I'm going to have to quit my job. She's going to require all of my attention. I just had no idea what life was going to be like at that time. So the grief was so bad that I thought I was almost willing to consider putting her up for adoption. But I remember back in those days, you could have your baby go to a nursery while you were recovering from giving birth. And I remember this little angel of a nurse came in to me and I said, I just need to sleep. And she said, the nursery is full. And she picked Alex up out of that little bassinet that they had her in, gave her to me, and gave me a pamphlet. I think it was Regional Center pamphlet. And she left me there with my new baby as I was just kind of staring at her. And I remember I pulled the little beanie that was on her head and I was looking at her dark black hair and I was counting her fingers and toes and was like, okay, 5, 5, 5, 5. We've got 10 digits. That's all normal. And then she looked at me and we had this connection at that moment. And I said, okay, all right. So it's not what I had planned. This isn't what I asked for, but you're my baby. You're my daughter. And I'm going to do the best I can being your mom. And that's the connection that happened. And I just kind of said, all right, here we go. I'm going to learn as much as I can to give her an incredible life. When new parents call the center, I talk to a lot of new moms and they have this guilt that they feel because they're grieving. And I have to tell them it's normal. Everything that you are feeling is normal. You had a path, and that path has now been thrown over here. But your grieving, your feelings of loss, all of those things are totally normal. Totally normal. So don't beat yourself up over it. But find that path that you're now on, and let's see how we can make that path one that works for you and your family and your new baby, because this baby will develop the same traits and characteristics of the family. If you guys like sports, this baby is going to love sports. As they're growing up, they're going to sit and watch sports with mom or dad or sisters or brothers. They're going to be into hiking or sailing, whatever it is you guys do. This baby is part of your family. And it's so easy to forget that when you are now thrown on this journey that you feel like maybe you can't handle, but there are so many people that can support you on that journey. You're definitely not alone. And that helped me. One thing that also helped me, I had a craving. I needed to see older people with Down syndrome functioning. I needed to see them just doing kind of typical things. And that was something, not all parents are ready for that, but that was something I needed. And I knew this man with Down syndrome that happened to work at Carl's Jr. And I remember I had Alex with me and I went in and I saw him and I introduced him. And he recognized right away, oh, she's like me. And it was just a really cool thing because I was watching him work, I was watching him engage with the customers. And I thought I needed to see that because all I had in my arms at that point was just this little baby. Alex had this threshing tongue and she just would constantly, and I just needed to know that life would be as normal as possible with her, but it's going to look different, but maybe not as different as I'm thinking. And just to kind of roll onto that path and let her kind of help dictate, where things are going as she goes through life and gets older. And that's how it's been. Through Alex's 33 years of life, she has shown me what her likes are, what her dislikes are. She loves the Steelers because that's dad's team. And God forbid we like any other football team in the house. But it's funny because she will sit on that couch and she will just scream at the TV along with him. And it's fun because that's some people think that they're not going to get that. They're not going to. Their child with Down syndrome will not grow up kind of liking the same things. Well, what if we can't do our family bike rides? What if we can't go here or go there? Many of our kids adapt very well to those things. One of our families, they have to take an oxygen tank with them if they're going up to their place in Big Bear, but they do it. And their son is very much a part of all of their activities. Their preparation just looks a little bit different. One thing I wanted to say is when she was younger, I remember taking her to a family member's daughter's birthday party. So Alex was the only one there with any disability. She was the only one there with Down syndrome. And I remember how I felt, how I was comparing Alex to the other kids and, oh, I wish Alex could just be a little more normal and not make those noises when she's in the bounce house because the other kids are looking at her like she's from a different planet. And I remember feeling all those feelings back then. And I remember just not going to birthday parties anymore. No, we've got plans. And as I got older, I learned how to cope with all that much, much better. But I kind of hid away because I felt like I was protecting her from being made fun of or from being stared at. I will tell you that now we have more birthday parties that she's invited to than we can even keep track of. Her friendship circle is huge. She goes to birthday parties, regular parties. Our kids like to get together and be social. And it is such a beautiful thing to see that. But it's all been her plan. I mean, she's the one who told me what friends she likes to be around. And she's the one who has dictated a lot of this stuff in her life. I think back on birthday parties and how stressful those were, to be invited to a birthday party that wasn't for a child with Down syndrome or other disability and thinking, oh, Alex isn't going to fit in. And those feelings were very real back then. And I've learned over time how to better prepare myself because Alex is going to go to that party and she's going to have a great time no matter what. But it's me. It was me that was having the challenges, me that was feeling these feelings of like trying to protect her when honestly, I'm just going to let her go in the bounce house and just be herself. And the kids learned that's Alex. Those are the noises she makes. And eventually they all just kind of grew up together and they're all great friends now and they understand Alex now. But I had to let people experience Alex, let people ask questions about her. And it set me at ease and it allowed me to not hide away. And Alex was going to more parties after that, and I didn't need to protect her. You asked me like how we go through our faith and having a child with Down syndrome. Alex is very connected to our church, and we actually have lectors at our church with disabilities, one that has Down syndrome. So we love seeing that representation. It's really fun because you go through church, you go through the various prayers, and we talk about God, we talk about Jesus. And it didn't hit me. I always felt like Alex was kind of right there understanding things. But I remember we were at a retreat, and it was a very quiet moment at the retreat, and we were all kind of sitting. Um, Alex and I were sitting, together, and then we were kind of spaced out from other people. And they were going through the stations of the cross and talking about Jesus dying, Jesus being dead. And Alex just blurts out, Jesus is dead? Thank God. I just kind of went, okay, we're going to take a deep breath. The room got very quiet. There were a few giggles of people that understood. They knew Alex. And I just reached over and told Alex, you know what, Alex, we'll talk about it later. And then she said, okay. But I realized that in our family, Jesus is very much alive, and Jesus was very much alive in Alex. That to hear that he was dead based on what was being discussed that day at the retreat, in her mind, it was like, wait, what? Why didn't you tell me this? So it's interesting how she perceives things. And sometimes we need to explain things to her in a different way, maybe open up dialogue a little bit differently and a little bit more. But she very much takes part in the faith of our family, in activities at the church. I make sure to explain things to her a little bit more detailed, and I meet her where she is. I can tell you that we know that terminations are happening. We do our best at the Down Syndrome Association to provide as much information and resources and a parent mentor to anyone that reaches out that's received a prenatal diagnosis. I can tell you that from those that we know that probably terminated the pregnancy, there's more of a fear of what other people think than a fear of them being able to manage a child having Down syndrome. I remember one person who lives in a very nice place in South County said, well, what are my clients going to think if I have a baby with Down syndrome? And that really hit me hard because I remember in Alex's early life, I cared so much about other people and what they were going to think and how they were going to judge that I had a baby with Down syndrome. And so the first thing I try to tell people is this is still a baby. This is still part of you and the person that you love. Are there going to be challenges? Are there going to be inconveniences? Absolutely. But you're not alone. We can help you with everything. And I invite them to our programs. I invite them to everything that we have going on here so that they can see firsthand the beauty in our kids. We have genetics counselors that make a stop here. We're part of their curriculum at our center. So they come through, and in a non-clinical setting, these genetic counselor students get to meet our teens and adults in programs that we're holding here, and their life is changed forever. Once they walk out of that room, they've had a chance to meet our teens and adults. They come out and just said, wow, we had no idea of their level of ability to communicate. They are just like a typical teen or adult with a few differences here or there, but they have the most fun engaging with our kids. And for that time, there's no judgment. There's just the beauty of socialization, the beauty of being together, all the feels. And they come out of our programs just with a smile on their face. Many of them will end up volunteering for our organization because of how they felt coming in. So if we can provide that same feeling to a parent with a prenatal diagnosis, that's what we want to do. We have our new parent luncheon, which also allows our expectant parents to meet some of our new parents and talk directly with them. Alex is 33. I can tell you about her birth story, but it's better to have parents that have new babies sitting with those that are expecting so that they can talk about their concerns and discuss what life is like in the new years of having a baby with Down syndrome. It's so hard because I have my typical 16-year-old and I have my daughter with Down syndrome at 33, and I wouldn't change anything. The journeys that they both have me on are very different. Some of it can be the same. Alex can have some inconveniences, but so does Gabby. So does a typical kid. The heartaches that I feel are very much balanced between my two kids. It is a different journey, but again, you're not alone. A whole new world and circle of friends has opened to me because of my daughter being born with Down syndrome. It is a beautiful life with Alex. I wouldn't change it for anything. And the bumps in the road, we're never alone during those bumps in the road, ever. There's always somebody that I can reach out to and talk to. It's really interesting that my grief is now the thought of not being able to live without Alex. Sorry, I got a little emotional there. I'm so sorry. Our kids love their birthdays. In fact, at our teen adult dance, the red carpet ball, when I'm standing up there in front of almost 300 people, we sing happy birthday one time to everybody because birthdays, our kids love their birthdays. And Alex, just turning 33 in October, she is part of the Alzheimer's Down syndrome research program through UCI. From where I sit here at the Down Syndrome Association, we have individuals in their 40s and early 50s that we've seen that are already slipping away from us. And that is the most devastating. And I know we're going to see that more and more. So every time she celebrates a birthday, there's always that part of me now that's like, stop, slow down, I don't want you to see that next birthday so quickly. But the beauty of it is that she's doing great at 33. We're keeping her extremely active in programs every day. She's definitely still very witty, and the research that we go through says that she's still doing great. But I just know, is there going to be that time and when they say that it's not? So my grief isn't about having a daughter with Down syndrome. It's now about losing her. And that's the way my grief has changed. Before it was, I didn't plan this. It was more about me. Am I going to be able to handle this? What's going to change in my life now that I had a baby with Down syndrome? But we had 17 years with her where we forgot to have another kid. Like, we were having so much fun with her. She was such a fun travel companion. We would take her to San Diego Zoo because it helped her with her speech and the animals, because she loved the animals. So the animals would really prompt her to want to talk and not use so much sign language. So we would do these annual trips to San Diego Zoo and SeaWorld, and it would really help her with her speech. And again, just fun to travel with, just a fun kid. And then when she was 17, I thought, before I get too old, I should probably see if things still work. And then we had Gabby. People said, oh, 17 years apart. You have a daughter with Down syndrome that's seven. Oh, they're never going to fight. Now, oh my gosh, were they wrong? Alex was the only one that can make her little sister belly laugh, but there were times when Alex was just done with her sister. So we saw a lot of the same sibling stuff going on that we would see in any typical family, even though there's 17 years difference. And then when Gabby got older and then started to be able to do even more things than Alex was able to do, then Gabby started helping Alex with stuff. But we always had to remind Gabby that Alex is still your big sister. So we would develop scenarios where we would have Alex help her little sister, even though Gabby was very much able to do it on her own. But it reminded Alex that I am Gabby's big sister. And now Gabby, at 16 years old, she volunteers here. She's very much a part of the Down syndrome community herself. And she always tells me, Mom, I don't even want to think about it, but you just know that if anything happens to you or dad, I've got Alex. She's my sister. I've got her. So I always encourage people, if they're able, even if they end up waiting till their kid with Down syndrome is 17, but always think about having another child because the sibling piece is a beautiful thing. I know people who thought that I don't think I can handle having another baby because of the complications of my son or daughter with Down syndrome. And I've seen that, but I try to encourage people, don't let that stop you if it's something you're able to do, because the sibling piece is so important as well in our kids' lives. I would not change Alex for the world. There's no amount of money, nothing that could ever say, Kelly, if you could take it all back and she not have Down syndrome. Absolutely not. I love her. I've gone through so much with her and some things that I thought we're never going to be able to get through this, but we did. And I was never alone, never, ever alone. We work so hard through our kids' life. We go through all the therapy sessions with them and the school therapy, and we get them to a point where we're like, we did it. They're excelling. They get it. They're going through life.
Yeah.
They're being with friends and having friends and everything. And then all of a sudden, that horrible thought of them
Yeah.
getting Alzheimer's and just taking it all away it's real, and it sucks. It's
Yeah.
scary. But more and more of our kids are getting involved in the research. Alex has been in the research now for a couple of years, and we're hoping that maybe by the time Knightley is around that time, maybe they'll figure something out. But that's why we're encouraging some of our families that have older kids to get involved in the research through UCI. So we're hoping and praying that we can figure this out.